Hello, Durud and Shalom. Hi, guys. Make sure you like the stream. I have bad news. We are screwed big times. And by we, I mean we Iranians. And I, like, every time I look into this, absolute water bankruptcy in Iran, I get more and more depressed. So I thought, hey, how about I just share some of that with you guys? I think, like, whenever something is stressing you out, if you share it with people, it's gets easier. And I don't know, does it? I don't know. Let's try and see what happens here. You guys know, most of you know about this, but let's go over the details of what's happening. And actually, some people tell me, like, I mean, are people like going thirsty in Iran? Like, do they have water to drink? So I think a lot of people don't understand what the water crisis is actually leading to. Like, what is the actual consequences? Because um, it's more like the farming area, like the farming sector in Iran consumes most of the water. So the water crisis, I think, means that the food prices are going to skyrocket. I think that's the main consequence. But let's actually look into this and figure this out together. Guys, make sure you like the stream. I need more people to see this. This is not one of those shows that gets a lot of views, but I was so curious into getting more into the details. I mean, I constantly get reports from Iran about how big of a disaster this is. But what I want to do now is, like, look into the details of more details on how we got here. Okay, so let's watch this.
Iran, as a nation, is arguably facing its greatest civilizational crisis that it has seen in centuries now. Geopolitically speaking, Tehran has suffered continuous setback after setback over the last couple of years in its decades-long confrontation with Israel, the Islamic Republic's top declared enemy. Its overseas proxies that it has spent billions of dollars and decades of time building up and arming, like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and the Assad regime in Syria, have all been either effectively crippled or completely destroyed, exposing the Iranian heartland to direct hostile foreign attacks for the first time in decades. US and Israeli warplanes were subsequently able to relentlessly bombard the country's sensitive military and nuclear research sites with impunity. An American-mediated peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan simultaneously threatens to establish a continuous corridor of NATO-Turkish influence across Iran's northern border in the South Caucasus, blocking off Iran from being able to maintain a direct land corridor with their ally Russia. While growing instability in the east with the wild Taliban regime in Afghanistan is resulting in unpredictable, violent border skirmishes after the government accused its Afghan population of collective disloyalty and spying for Israel during the war. And Tehran's decision to begin forcefully deporting millions of undocumented Afghans from the country across the border after the government accused its Afghan population of collective disloyalty and spying for Israel during the war. And yet, despite all of these enormous ongoing external crises,
the government was the reason why they brought all of those people in to change the demographics of Iran. And then once some of them ended up being, maybe, I don't know, Mossad spies, now they're trying to get rid of all of them.
Yet, despite all of these enormous ongoing external crises, Iran's greatest contemporary problem that threatens its entire existence is not geopolitical, but internal and environmental. Because in just a short amount of time, Iran might very well become the very first major society in the modern world to legitimately begin running out of water for its own people. And because Iran is such a huge...
Guys, who has the best technology to help with this problem? Do you guys know? Let me know in the chat. Do you know who has the best technology to help with Iran's water problems right now? If we had a good relationship with the country? Yeah, thank you, Nelbin. Israel. Yeah, everybody's saying Israel in the chat. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Ability in running out of water for its own people. And because Iran is such a huge country with more than 92 million people, that's not just a huge problem for Iran, but a huge problem for the entire rest of the world as well. The situation has gotten so bad that it is now acutely visible even within the capital and the seat of the government's power in Tehran, which is also Iran's largest city. Roughly 10 million people live within the city limits of Tehran today, about 11% of the country's total nationwide population, and yet Tehran now consumes roughly a quarter of all of Iran's water supplies.
Shit.
70% of Tehran's water supply is usually provided by a series of nearby dams and their reservoirs at Amir Kabir, Lar, Mamlu, and Latian. But as of September of 2025, all 4 of their reservoirs are at critical and unprecedentedly low levels. The usual level of annual rainfall that Tehran experiences is about 200.
Guys, this is getting, you have no, like, if things go the same way that they're going, like, I don't even know what they're going to do. Are they going to basically move everybody from Tehran to somewhere else? This is like insane. Like, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do.
60 millimeters. But in 2024, the capital only experienced a fraction of this at 140 millimeters, while preliminary estimates for 2025 suggest an even more catastrophic level of rainfall at just 100 millimeters. With that in mind, these reservoirs around Tehran combined typically hold a long-term average of 618 million cubic meters of water within them. But in 2024, they had dwindled down to just 485 million cubic meters remaining. And as of September 2025, they've withered away even further to just 258 million cubic meters of water remaining, meaning that half of Tehran's stored water reserves disappeared in just a single year. Even worse, the Latian.
Well, so what are they going to do? These are millions and millions of people that need a lot of water. Like, I don't understand. Like, why is this not an international headline? Like, I don't know what's going to happen. This is like, what the hell?
Dam reservoir in particular, which usually holds about 95 million cubic meters of water, has shrunk by more than 90% and now contains just about 9 million cubic meters still remaining. The underground aquifers beneath the city have also begun collapsing and running dry after decades of chronic overuse, resulting in a rapidly accelerating rate of subsidence that has been seeing Tehran sinking into the ground beneath it by several millimeters a year recently, threatening the capital's infrastructure and buildings. Over the summer of 2025,
that's great. Like, as if we didn't have enough problems.
Threatening the capital's infrastructure and buildings. Over the summer of 2025, the water crisis got so bad that the Iranian government was forced to just completely cut the taps in the capital for half a day as the temperature soared to more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit, resulting in high energy demand from air conditioners on the city's grid that resulted in power cuts and rolling blackouts on top of the water cuts. Months beforehand, in late 2024, the Iranian government was already demanding that offices, schools.
Guys, this is stressing me out. I don't know, like, I know you guys are not Iranian, so this might not stress you out as much, but this is really stressing me out.
And even banks in the capital all had to be shut down on particularly bad weather days in order to conserve power. While officials were cautioning that if nothing was done to ration their energy, Tehran could become forced to adopt a 4-day work week during the summer when demand on the grid was particularly intense. The government has already started rationing the water supply in the capital by cutting off households' water supply for 3 to 6 hours a day. And in some cases, the water pressure has gotten so low that it now fails to reach some high-rises in the city, forcing their residents to carry bottled water or buckets up to their apartments for all of their water needs instead.
You know, when it comes to real estate that is being sold in Iran, now some of the ads, when people are trying to sell like an apartment, part of the ads is that there's a water tank in the roof in case there's water cuts, and also part of the ads is that our building is not close to any government buildings, government-owned buildings. Do you know why? Guys, let me know in the chat, why would that be part of the ad for, like, part of the listing of apartments, that our apartments, one of the features is that we're not close to a government building. Do you know why that's one of the features in the listings for, like, apartments being sold and stuff? That, hey, we're not close to a government building. Any guesses in the chat? No? Because of Israeli strikes. Yeah, because of Israeli strikes. No, because they're going to say, like, your building will not get damaged in the next war. When Israel strikes again, your building is far away from Israeli targets.
Carry bottled water or buckets up to their apartments for all of their water needs instead. The crisis has gotten so bad in Tehran that questions have even been raised about the city's long-term habitability. While the government has even announced that it's currently investigating relocating the capital away from Tehran to somewhere else that doesn't have as many.
By the way, this is the president, which means he's a nobody. In Iran, the president has basically zero power. He's just basically the puppet of the supreme leader.
It's currently investigating relocating.
He's a Pezeshkian.
Getting the capital away from Tehran to somewhere else that doesn't have as many water and infrastructure related issues. Iran's current sitting president, Masoud Pezeshkian, has publicly stated that he has proposed relocating the country's capital further away to the south, somewhere near.
Like, this is insane. They want to move like more than 12 million people from here to here. Like, how? Like, you can't even, like, are you going to build? You can't even provide enough buildings for them there. Like, how are you going to, you don't have enough money to make them a new city in the middle of nowhere. Like, how are you going to do that? Unbelievable.
He stated that he has proposed relocating the country's capital further away to the south, somewhere near to the Persian Gulf, in order to be closer to strategic trade routes in the area.
But there is also no water there. Like, how is that going to, like, okay, these people need water. There's no water in Tehran, so let's move them over there. But there is no water there. There's also no drinking water. Like, oh my God, there's no usable water there.
The problem is that the water crisis is not just a problem that's unique to Tehran.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there you go. The video is just now repeating what I just said.
It is a problem that is facing the entire country from north to south and from east to west. Everywhere across the country, reservoirs are running dry and lakes are disappearing. The Iranian regime's own news agency, IRNA, reported in early October of 2025 that 19 of the country's largest reservoirs are currently on the verge of complete dryness, and that 3 of them, left unnamed in the report, have already hit 0% remaining capacity. More than half of the dams across the country now hold less than 40%.
By the way, guys, don't just blame climate change for this. Most of this is because of mismanagement by the regime. This is not because of the sanctions. This is not mostly because of climate change. This is mostly because of mismanagement by the regime. I hope this video goes over that.
Capacity. More than half of the dams across the country now hold less than 40% of their overall capacity. Lake Urmia, once the largest lake in the...
Oh, this is Lake Urumia, not Urmia. Urumia. This is the Daryacha Urumia.
40%.
Guys, like, I used to swim. When I was a kid, I used to swim in that lake. Now their lake is gone. It was such a beautiful lake.
Of their overall capacity. Lake Urmia.
This used to be a lake that I used to swim in as a kid. I remember it was so salty that you could not sink. Like, if you need to swim to keep yourself down. And this was such a memorable. I remember going swimming here with my dad, and it was such a beautiful memory because it was the first time that the reason why you had to swim is so that you don't float up completely. You actually had to swim to keep yourself down. It's, usually when you swim, you're swimming so you don't sink. This lake used to be so salty that you had to swim so that you don't float all the way up. That was
across the country now hold less than 40% of their overall capacity. Lake
Urmia, but now it's not there. It's completely dry. There is no lake anymore.
Urmia, once the largest lake in the entire Middle East that was in northwestern Iran, has nearly completely dried up, leaving behind nothing but a salty, dusty crust. More than 280 cities across the country now face extreme water stress, like the city of Yazd, whose water supply ran out in...
Oh wow, guys, LGBT. Is this LGBT?
Extreme water stress, like the city of Yazd, whose water supply ran out entirely as recently as March of 2025, which led to the city having to be entirely supplied by water tankers and bottled water for nearly a week until the taps could be restored. Rural communities across the country have been even more badly struck, as hundreds of villages now rely completely on tanker trucks after their wells have run dry. Cities across the country are literally sinking as their underground aquifers have been completely depleted, while cracks are forming in rail lines connecting the country's major cities together.
By the way, Iran used to be a country that in ancient times, it had the most advanced water system. In ancient times, it was ahead of its time. Like, I don't know exactly what they were called, but I remember studying this. Like, in ancient times, the water system that we had in Iran was something that historians today study as something that was uniquely advanced for its time. And now look what happened.
Cracks are forming in rail lines connecting the country's major cities together. Some Iranian officials have even warned about a looming day zero in Tehran and in other cities across the country. The day when the taps for millions of people may run dry completely. It has gotten so bad that it has started to become exploitable by hostile foreign actors. Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, released a video in August of 2025 that directly encouraged the Iranian people to rise up and revolt against their conditions. He said at the time, quote, "Iran's thirst for water is only matched by its thirst for freedom. Once Iran..."
I mean, that's a pretty good quote. You must admit, I don't know if you love him or hate him. I don't care. That's a pretty good quote. Iran's thirst for water is only matched by its thirst for freedom. That's a very powerful quote, man. That's a very powerful quote.
Iran's thirst for water is only matched by its thirst for freedom. Once Iran is free, Israel's top water experts will come to every city in the country with the most advanced technologies and knowledge to help Iran with water recycling and desalination.
That's what we need, honestly. That's what we need right now. We need Israeli technology. We need that. We need that right now, guys. Free the country so we could do this.
End quote. Even though Netanyahu was the absolutely wrong man to make such a pitch to the Iranian people, he wasn't wrong about the fact that the water crisis has become the Iranian government's greatest.
Wait, what did he say?
Even though Netanyahu was the
By the way, this video is by Real Life Lore. Somebody was asking.
Absolutely wrong man to make such a pitch to the Iranian people.
Why is he a wrong man to make he's the best man right now to make such a pitch. The second best man to make such a pitch. The first best man being Prince Reza Pahlavi. Netanyahu is the second best person to make such a pitch. It's whoever the leader of Israel is an ally of the Iranian people. What the fuck? Why is this video making such a moral judgment about this case, like with this issue? What are you talking about? The message of Netanyahu to the Iranian people when he released videos regarding Iran's water crisis was welcomed by so many Iranians. Who are you to speak on behalf of Iranians regarding who we accept as a messenger or not?
With water recycling and desalination, end quote. Even though Netanyahu was the absolutely wrong man to make such a pitch to the Iranian people, he wasn't wrong about the fact that the water crisis has become the Iranian government's greatest strategic vulnerability. It is exacerbating the country's complicated ethnic fault lines as minority groups accuse the regime of prioritizing water access for the Persian majority. And it is all a complicated story of government corruption and graft, terrible policies, climate change, and geopolitical developments and intrigue that have led Iran to the brink of water bankruptcy today.
I'm glad that he said government corruption and mismanagement before climate change, because that's the main factor here.
Understand how the country got here, we have to go back in time to the late 1940s when Iran was still ruled as an absolute monarchy by the Shah.
That is wrong. Holy shit, this is an educational channel. Absolute monarchy? Iran was not under the Shah. Iran was not an absolute monarchy. Under the Shah, Iran was a constitutional monarchy. What are you talking about? We had a constitution, we had a parliament, we had elections. The Shah was limited in what he could do. In fact, for him to be able to do his white revolution, he had to put up a referendum. What are you talking about? How is that absolute? How is it an absolute monarchy when the Shah had to go campaign for his plan to the Iranian people so he could get their approval before he could do his white revolution? But the vast majority of Iranian people voted yes for it. Like, how is that absolute monarchy when he's campaigning for his program? What are you talking about? The Shah was not an absolute monarch. He was a constitutional monarch. This is insane.
1940s, when Iran was still ruled as an absolute monarchy by the Shah.
Guys, these are the educational videos out there. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of good information here. But look at this. This video was released 8 days ago and it has received 1 million views. 1 million views, and like this is the information that is being spread out there about the Shah. Like, oh my god, this pisses me off.
In 1949, the Iranian Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, took a visit to the city of Las Vegas in the United States. He was there on official business to observe the marvel of the Hoover Dam that the Americans had constructed across the Colorado River, which created a vast reservoir behind it in Lake Mead that enabled the desert metropolis of Las Vegas to survive and to thrive. The Shah was interested in modernizing his own country, and building monumental dams and reservoirs in the similarly arid Iranian climate was of a very deep interest to him. He returned back to
the Shah was very, very eager to make the Iranians' lives, the conditions that the Iranian people were living in, better. He was obsessed with improving the well-being of the Iranian people.
Similarly arid Iranian climate was of a very deep interest to him. He returned back to Iran from the Mojave Desert with a new ambition, and with technical assistance and engineers that were provided to him by the Truman administration, who brought modern irrigation and drilling technologies that enabled Iran's farmers to begin draining their ancient aquifers at an unsustainable rate. Iran—
Wait, what did he say? Hold on.
Ambition. Interest to him. He returned back to Iran from the Mojave Desert with a new ambition, and with technical assistance and engineers that were provided to him by the Truman administration, who brought modern irrigation and drilling technologies that enabled Iran's farmers to begin draining their ancient aquifers at an unsustainable rate. Iran, as a country, has a very uneven distribution of water resources found across the country. Across a strip of land in the north of Iran near the Caspian Sea, the annual rainfall levels are high and average about 1,280 millimeters per year, similar to the levels that are seen in wet environments like New York City, which makes this whole area a lush, dense, green forest that looks nothing like most Westerners' popular perception of Iran.
Yeah, so this is where we usually go for, when we live, I used to live in Tehran, like right around here, right? And like close to Tehran in the north of Iran, you have all of this green area, right next to the sea. Well, actually it's a lake, but we call it a sea because it's so big. And this is where we go to have fun, and especially because it's so close to Tehran, so you could just drive there and go to all these green areas. So every time we have some holidays, or if it's a long weekend, we just drive up here to enjoy all the nature and all the trees and stuff like that.
Iran. But across the central plateau of Iran, that's the heartland of the Persian people, and across the southern lowlands, annual rainfall will rarely ever exceed more than 100 millimeters. And it's also extremely seasonal. The rainy season across these other parts of Iran usually only lasts between October and March, and that'll leave the land extremely dry for most of the rest of the year. In some places, the entire year's worth of rainfall might fall during sudden torrential storms that last only a few days. As a result, the Shah and his engineers wanted to modernize Iran and redistribute the availability of water throughout the country by diversions and—
Yeah, so see, this is how kind the Shah was. The Shah was like, okay, we up here and all the way here, we're getting a lot of water, and these people here are not getting any water. We need to find a way to get the water from here to over here. That's what the Shah wanted to do.
Dams to regulate water flows. But he also ordered the—
He wanted to use dams to regulate the water flow so that the other parts of Iran could get more water
throughout the country by diversions and dams to regulate water flows. But he also ordered the establishment of water-hungry industries like petrochemical and steel plants to be constructed in the drier parts of the country within the Central Plateau in the Persian majority region at places like Isfahan and Fars, which tied—
Well, you had to, because those were where the people were and where the businesses were, so you had to build them close to where business activity was already there to make them succeed.
The fate of Iran's heavy industries to geographic areas that lacked meaningful water supplies of their own and were over-reliant—
Yeah, but these are the place where all the labor is.
To geographic areas that lacked meaningful water supplies of their own and were over-reliant on diversions of water from other parts of the country. Later in the early 1960s.
So if you didn't build them there, they would be dammed twice. They have no water, and now they have no economic activity as well. It's damned if you damned if you don't. If you just bring it over there, You're like, oh no, like now they're getting the water and the jobs. Okay.
reliant on diversions of water from other parts of the country. Later in the early 1960s, the Shah implemented a series of land reforms in the country that redistributed Iran's large feudal agricultural estates to smaller farmers and families that promoted their adoption of mechanized farming with state incentives.
So that was, I mean, he's underselling what happened. This is basically the white revolution that I was talking about. The Shah asked the Iranian people to vote on a referendum and vote yes for his white revolution, which two important things that he did is that he gave women the right to vote. That was part of the white revolution, and that's why a lot of women really loved the Shah. And also, he basically ended feudalism in Iran. So before the Shah, Iran was feudalism, meaning that we had lords and serfs. So the Shah was like, okay, well, let's end that. So he went and forced all of these lords to sell their lands. So the Shah bought their lands and basically gave it to the peasants, and made them farmers with their own land, right? So that's what the Shah did to basically end feudalism in Iran.
Farmers and families that promoted their adoption of mechanized farming with state incentive.
Oh, and also he went in to educate them. He went and built schools for adults in all of these villages for adults who didn't know how to read and write, and also tried to teach them how to use, different machinery for farming.
Land reforms in the country that redistributed Iran's large feudal agricultural estates to smaller farmers and families that promoted their adoption of mechanized farming with state incentives. Millions of Iranian peasants were granted new land to farm with their new mechanized equipment, but it also...
So these were peasants who used to work for lords. Now they're just farmers who own the lands that used to belong to their lords. That's what the Shah did.
It led to a breakdown in Iran's traditional system of irrigation that had lasted for thousands of years before it that were called qanats. Qanats.
Oh yeah, so so these are the water system that I was talking about that existed in Iran in ancient times, and is basically was ahead of its time.
Mechanized equipment. But it also led to a breakdown in Iran's traditional system of irrigation that had lasted for thousands of years before it that were called qanats. Qanats are effectively
It's qanat.
Underground aqueducts that the Persians had perfected over millennia to transport water across the arid and hot central plateau. But these qanats that had supplied Iranian cities with water for countless generations began to be steadily abandoned in the early 1960s, as the new peasant farmers began switching over to motorized deep wells en masse in order to access the country's below-ground aquifers, which had only limited supplies of water that takes thousands of years to naturally replenish and recharge. The process of abandoning the country's traditional water management system in exchange for new and misunderstood technologies had already begun, but it would dramatically skyrocket to wildly unsustainable levels after the Islamic Revolution overthrew the Shah in 1979 and established...
Okay, it wouldn't have been unsustainable if they just continued to plant the things that the Shah to farm the things that was being farmed under the Shah. Okay, so under the Shah, they were basically farming plants like asparagus and other things that didn't didn't need a lot of water, and was also very expensive. Like you would get a lot of money out of it from selling it to foreigners. But after the revolution, the mullahs wanted to be. They were insulting the Shah by saying like, why are we farming these plants here that is not part of the Iranian diet? Only the foreigners eat this. We should be planting the thing that the Iranians eat. So they started switching to wheat and watermelon, which required a lot of water, and also they weren't that expensive. So because they were isolationists and they wanted to be self-reliant, they started planting things that the Iranian people actually ate as part of their diet. But the thing is that those were the same things that required a lot of water and also wasn't that expensive. They didn't understand that you should have continued farming the same things that were being farmed under the Shah, because you could sell those to foreigners and buy a lot more of the things that Iranians eat with that money. That's how free trade works. Well, thank you for the super chat. Gage in American saying Chinese Dynasties have been overthrown for less. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat.
Sustainable levels after the Islamic Revolution overthrew the Shah in 1979 and established the modern theocratic Islamic Republic in its place. After radical Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took 66 Americans as hostages, diplomatic relations between Iran and the United States collapsed, and the U.S. initiated a trade embargo against Iran that has continued for decades ever since, restricting the country's access to the mechanized equipment and parts that it came to rely upon for its agriculture and irrigation beforehand during the Shah era. And at almost the exact same time, Iraq launched a full-scale invasion of Iran in 1980 that sparked
the reason why Iraq did that is because the mullahs killed a lot of the Shah's generals. So Saddam looked at the situation and was like, oh my God, this is like easy to, like, basically they tempted Saddam to attack Iran because they saw that Iran was weak because all of their main generals were already executed by the mullahs.
time, Iraq launched a full-scale invasion of Iran in 1980 that sparked the devastating 8-year-long Iran-Iraq War, which led to the introduction.
That's what I was born into. I was born into that war, in the middle of that war.
Of food and resource rationing in Iran as the
I remember my mom holding me in the balcony and saying, like, look, Armin, fireworks. And she said that because she wanted me to not be afraid, because what was actually happening, it was Tehran being bombed by Saddam's planes. But I very much remember my mom pointing out to the city at the balcony and saying, like, look, Armin, fireworks. But but that was not fireworks. It was not fireworks. We were being bombed. Hold on. Let me see. We got another super chat. Shauna saying, yeah, the American South had a huge industry because of cash crops, although Americans historically always grew some of their own food. Interesting. I didn't know that.
Long Iran-Iraq War, which led.
And thank you, Shauna, for the super chat.
To the introduction of food and resource rationing in Iran as the theocracy's first supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, began advocating for a policy of radical self-sufficiency and food sovereignty in a world that appeared overwhelmingly hostile to his new regime.
Oh, see, that's what I said. They wanted to be self-reliant, so they started planting things that. Oh my God! This policy of Khomeini is why right now we have a water bankruptcy in Iran. This is how it happened.
Began ordering a radical expansion in Iran's dams, wells, and agricultural infrastructure, all in the name of this self-sufficiency. Before
self-sufficiency basically means isolationism. This is why Iran is fucked, guys. I know, like, I'm very much against Islam, but I can tell you that isolationism has fucked Iran more than Islam. The communistic ideas of how to run the economy that the mullahs inherited from the communists has fucked Iran more than Islam.
Before the 1979 revolution, there were fewer than 80,000 wells across the country. But within just 3 years after the rise to power of the Ayatollahs, that number would more than double, while hundreds of new dams were being actively planned as well, most of them concentrated across the arid Central Plateau region. After the long war with Iraq came to an inconclusive end in 1988, the regime's personal army, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC, was suddenly left without a clear military purpose. And so, the government under then-President Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani adopted a new purpose.
Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, what are you talking about?
So, the government under then-President Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani adopted a new purpose for the IRGC that they called the Reconstruction Jihad, adapting the IRGC.
This is when the IRGC stopped just being a military unit and became a major part of the economy. This is how it all started. This is how the IRGC became the Islamic Republic.
For the IRGC that they called the Reconstruction Jihad, adapting the IRGC to construction and development in order to maintain their influence and morale. a new engineering firm run by the IRGC was established that was called the Khatam Al-Anibia Construction Company, which quickly became the regime's go-to contractor for building dams, tunnels, and other water transfer projects. Another company called the Iran Water and Power Resources Development Company, or the IWPCO, was also founded as a state-owned design firm by regime insiders, while an incredibly powerful and opaque consulting and lobbying firm also run by regime insiders was founded, called Mahab Golds. All three of these companies were effectively run by the exact same people with close ties to the regime, and they collectively formed a closed loop with no external checks and balances. The IWPCO company would design and commission dam projects that were usually based on old, outdated Western blueprints and rarely ever considered any environmental studies. The Mahab.
And by the way, a lot of this was controlled by IRGC with no involvement from the private sector. So this is how you destroy your private sector, the industries in the private sector, and this is how you make the IRGC the most powerful entity in the Islamic Republic. Oh, we got another super chat. Gagin America saying America's Ogala aquifer is running low along with the Colorado River. New York City's new subtropical classification is going to increase our growing season. Okay, interesting. Thank you for the super chat.
Gold's company would then lobby the government for their approval, and then the Khatam Al-Anibia company would be immediately awarded the
Khatam al-Anbiya. That's what he means. Khatam al-Anbiya. That's a huge IRGC company with so much money. And it's named Khatam al-Anbiya, basically meaning the last prophet, meaning Prophet Muhammad.
Rarely ever considered any environmental studies. The Mahab Golds company would then lobby the government for their approval, and then the Khatam Al-Anibia company would be
Khatam al-Anbiya company
immediately awarded the no-bid contracts to actually build the projects and was shielded from any political oversight. This network of IRGC and regime-operated firms and companies that all worked together in tandem eventually came to be called the country's water mafia, and the rapid expansion of dam and water projects came to be seen as avenues for enriching themselves rather than benefiting the country. Over the next few decades,
they basically turned water into something that to fund IRGC, and they basically bankrupted Iran's water supply because IRGC was basically, it's like a leech. You know, when we tell you IRGC has invaded Iran and is basically destroying Iran to grow itself, it's not, these are not made up. These are not exaggerations. You could see that it's based on facts.
the water mafia constructed hundreds of dams all across the country, usually without any environmental assessments or any long-term planning at all. Water from rivers were diverted by the water mafia to feed IRGC-owned factories, plants, and heavy industries at the expense of agricultural and municipal supplies to further enrich themselves.
Basically, they're stealing the water from the farmers for IRGC factories. Jesus Christ.
Some of the most infamous water mega projects the Islamic Republic carried out following the war with Iraq include the 550,000 hectare project that began in 1996 in the western provinces of Khuzestan and Elam. Enormous amounts of land were confiscated by the government, and the Karun River was diverted to feed industrial farms controlled by regime-linked insiders. A mega dam along the Karun River called the Gotvand Dam was completed in 2011, despite ignored warnings by environmentalists that there would be enormous salt formation at the site if it went ahead. As predicted, once the dam's reservoir was filled, it began leaching salt into the river and dramatically raised salinity levels further downstream for Arab minority communities in Khuzestan.
So everybody knew what's going to happen. They were basically fucking up everybody here. And they were like, yeah, we don't give a shit. Like, we need this. We need this water.
Flaming their attitudes against the non-Arab dominated regime. All attempts to seal.
So look, and they also caused division because these people here are the minority Arab population of Iran. So they're basically causing ethnic, the government likes to cause ethnic divisions.
Salinity levels further down.
You know, the Arabs against Persians. But hopefully it's not, I mean, I think it's not working. I think Iranians are united, but we have a minority of Arabs in Iran, and the Islamic Republic, the regime likes to keep us divided on ethnic, on ethnic lines, so that they could basically divide and conquer.
Downstream for Arab minority communities in Khuzestan, inflaming their attitudes against the non-Arab dominated regime. all attempts to seal up the salt layer have failed ever since, which has left behind a huge saltwater lake in the reservoir behind the dam that is steadily choking off and killing much of the natural irrigation supply of water downstream in Kyrgyzstan, which is
I mean, if you own farmland here, the government just decided to destroy everything you own.
usually one of Iran's most naturally agriculturally productive regions. Despite them directly causing this environmental catastrophe, however, the IRGC-linked water mafia profited tremendously from the estimated $3.3 billion cost that it took to build the dam. Perhaps the single best illustration out of hundreds of examples across the country showing how the regime managed these misguided projects. By 2012, Iran had built 316 dams in the country, and within just 6 more years, by 2018...
You know, when we were kids, we saw these dams being built. We thought that something productive is being done for the future. We saw like, oh my God, there's so much construction. This must be good. Now when we grew up, we realized like they were basically destroying the country with these dams.
116 dams in the country, and within just
How many?
12, Iran had built 316 dams in the country, and within just 6 more years, by 2018, that number would more than double to 647 dams. Many of the country's highest water-consuming industries, like nuclear sites and steel plants, were all built deep within the Central Plateau.
Oh, there you go, nuclear sites. Another reason why we got fucked with this because of all this nuclear ambition.
Surrounded by the country's mountains for strategic defense reasons, but the consequence of that is that these industries are all located very far away from open waters, which has forced them to draw heavily on the country's limited rivers and aquifers, which has only accelerated the reduction in resources that were already scarce to begin with. The Zayanda Rud, the largest river found in the central
Zayanderud.
Scarce to begin with. The Zayanda Rud, the largest river found in the central plateau of Iran, has been so heavily diverted for water-hungry steel and petrochemical plants and for other provinces like Yazd that it has been reduced to only a seasonal mudflat now and routinely runs completely dry, which has plagued the city of Isfahan, the 3rd largest city in the country, with a crippling decrease in what used to be their primary natural water source. Lake Urmia, which used to be the largest lake in the entire
This is the lake that I used to swim in.
Middle East, has almost completely
Look at that. Look at that picture, okay?
Urmia, which used to be the largest.
This is Lake Urumia in 2020. In 2020, guys, this is not like 50 years ago. This is 5 years ago. 5 years ago. And
lake in the entire Middle East has almost completely.
And this is 3 years after. In 3 years. This is the biggest lake. This was the biggest lake in Iran. It's a giant lake. Like, this is huge. In 3 years, like, there's nothing left.
Dried up and died after dams constructed along the rivers that fed it throttled the lake's supply and its ability to replenish itself, leading to increased dust storms that are worsening respiratory problems and prompting increased levels of migration from the region. The amount of irrigated agricultural land around Lake Urmia has more than doubled since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, from 300,000 hectares then to around 700,000 hectares today, which was supplied by increasingly diverting the lake's rivers. But the problem is that the watershed around Lake Urmia only provides about 4 billion cubic meters of water per year to work with. And in order to properly irrigate all of the farmland that's been built up around the lake today, it requires between 4.5 to 5 billion cubic meters. Unable to acquire all of the water that they needed from the region's rivers, desperate farmers, often illegally without any permits or environmental reviews, began resorting to drilling illegal wells deep into the region's underground aquifers in order to access the water they needed. And processes just like this that have been draining Iran's aquifers dry have been taking place across the country for decades now. Desperate farmers experiencing the diversion of their rivers for IRGC-linked industrial applications resorted to widespread and often illegal well drilling to compensate. Between 2000...
Guys, Islam and communism, don't try it even once. This is all because of Islam and communism work together to do this to my country. Look what's happening.
In 2015, the number of registered legal wells in Iran almost doubled from 460,000 up to 794,000. And there are believed to be tens of thousands of additional illegal and undocumented wells that have been dug as well. Recent studies based on the Open Data Center of Iran, which itself is based on official and international statistics, currently ranks Iran 5th in the world for the rate of groundwater depletion. Out of Iran's original 500 billion cubic meters worth of fossil water that it had stored in its below-ground aquifers, it is estimated that about 200 billion are now gone forever. And most of the remaining
forever, meaning that even if the regime even if there's regime change, there's no recovering this. Permanently lost. It's over.
Estimated that about 200 billion are now gone forever. And most of the remaining 300 billion cubic meters are saline, which is useless for agricultural irrigation. Iran's overconsumption and depletion of its groundwater resources has gotten so drastic that despite a 50% increase in the number of wells in the country over the past 2 decades, the rate of groundwater extraction has actually declined by about 10% over the same time frame, as they've simply begun running out. To put it another way, despite Iran representing only about 1% of the global population, Iran is responsible for about 9% of worldwide groundwater extraction. As a consequence of this, half of Iran's aquifers are now estimated to be in a critically low state. And 6 of the country's major cities, including the capital Tehran, are among the top 43 cities globally that are suffering the highest rates of land subsidence or sinking. To give you some perspective as to how bad the subsidence problem is becoming in Iran, the global critical threshold for subsidence is regarded as a sinking rate of 4 millimeters per year. In many parts of Iran, the current rate of land subsidence is exponentially higher than that, at about 10 centimeters per year. And in some parts, it is reaching as high as 31 centimeters per year. In the capital city of Tehran, the groundwater levels have dropped by more than 12 meters just in the past 2 decades, which is causing critical land subsidence. But perhaps no other city in the country has suffered as severe consequences from below-ground aquifer over-extraction as the city of Isfahan, Iran's 3rd largest city, home to more than 5 million people. Over the past...
By the way, I miss Isfahan. Isfahan is the most beautiful city in the world that I can never visit.
Iran's 3rd largest city, home to more than 5 million people. Over the past few years, Isfahan has extracted an average of between 1.1 and 1.2 billion cubic meters of water from its aquifers that's primarily been used for agriculture. This has been going on for so long now that there is estimated to be a 23 billion cubic meter void of air beneath the city now, across an area of about 2,700 square kilometers.
Oh my God. What? Holy shit. Like, that is scary. Like, the whole thing is going to fall apart. Oh my.
Which in other terms means that there's essentially a 10-meter wide void beneath the ground throughout most of the city that is causing enormous subsidence issues.
Holy shit. Holy crap. Like, they're just living on a thin layer with a huge void under them.
The current governor of Isfahan reported to the Guardian newspaper in September of 2025 that 9 of the city's primary metro stations, 274 of its fire department junctions, 328 of its mosques, 37 of its libraries, 3 of its main hospitals, and 258 of its schools are located in areas with particularly high rates of subsidence. And at least...
Okay, but that's Tehran. That's not Isfahan. Is he talking about Isfahan while showing us pictures from... He's talking about Isfahan while showing us pictures from Tehran.
Newspaper in September of 2025, the 9 of the city's primary metro stations, 274 of its fire department junctions, 300...
Yeah, that's Tehran. That's not Isfahan. Isfahan has so many beautiful pictures. Why are you not showing us pictures from Isfahan?
28 of its mosques.
Maybe I should show you pictures of Isfahan myself, given that the guy is not... The B-roll is not accurate. Here's the B-roll. Here's the B-roll for Isfahan. He's giving us B-roll for... I provide the proper B-roll for Isfahan.
37 of its libraries, 3 of its main hospitals, and 258 of its schools are located in areas with particularly high rates of subsidence. And at least 40 of the city's schools have already been evacuated, and many of them have been condemned and demolished as a result. And worse still, the water infrastructure that the country has built is also just absurdly inefficient by global standards, further straining the country's increasingly dire water supply. As much as 90% of Iran's usable water is all dedicated to agriculture, despite agriculture
How many percent? I thought it was 70%.
taking the country's increasingly dire water supply. As much as 90% of Iran's usable water is all dedicated to agriculture.
90%. So yeah, the water bankruptcy, the first place you're going to feel it is in the cost of food.
Despite agriculture taking up less than 12% of the country's GDP. Iran's irrigation efficiency, the percentage of irrigation water that's actually used by the crops, is abysmally low at just about 30%.
What does that mean? That 70% of the water actually gets wasted and doesn't get to the plants? So 90% of the water is used for farming, and from that 90%, only 30% of it actually does something, and the rest of it gets wasted?
Used by the crops is abysmally.
Yep, so basically 70% of the 90% of the total water in Iran just gets to nothing, doesn't do anything, just gets wasted.
Low at just about.
Yeah, Ali is in chat. Ali is saying yes, most of it is wasted. That's crazy.
30%, well behind its neighbors like Iraq and Turkey, who maintain rates at more like 50%. Iranians.
See, like, by the way, guys, like, if you're talking about other countries like Mexico and America, like, you have no idea. What Iran is experiencing is not at all similar to what water issues that you're facing in other countries. I mean, even compared to other countries who are facing big problems, Iran's situation is far worse, let alone America.
Neighbors like Iraq and Turkey, who maintain.
Look, Iraq and Turkey have it better than Iran.
Rates at more like 50%.
50.
Iranian cities, on average, lose between 25 and 30% of their municipal water supply simply because of leaks, mismanagement, and outdated infrastructure, compared to cities in the global north that lose less than 10% of theirs on average. International financial sanctions and trade embargoes that have been imposed on Iran over the regime's nuclear weapons program, their financing of international terrorism, and their support for regional warfare has all highly restricted the country's access to modern technology, which has blocked critical upgrades to their water infrastructure and enabled these
you should have not done terrorism, I guess.
Efficiencies to manifest and fester. The Iranian regime often likes to blame these sanctions as the primary factor for their infrastructure's decay. But after a considerable amount of the sanctions were relieved after the Obama-era nuclear deal was made in 2015, the regime simply threw almost all of the extra cash they received into just more dam building and water transfer projects that enriched themselves, rather than adopting genuine reforms that would have helped assuage the crisis. Because.
Did you hear this, guys? This is why you shouldn't be like, oh, you should remove the sanctions for the sake of the Iranian people. When the sanctions were removed, they used that money to steal more water from the people. They didn't use that money in technology to bring more water to the people. They used the money from the sanctions being removed to build infrastructure that gives them the ability to take more water from the people and more to IRGC. This is why people are like, oh my God, you're so heartless. Why do you want more sanctions on Iran and the Islamic Republic when the Iranian people are suffering? This is why. This is why, because they are using the money to make the Iranian people suffer more.
Of all these inefficiencies and their reckless use of water for massive agricultural purposes to achieve self-sufficiency, Iran consumes roughly double the amount of water per year as neighboring Turkey does, despite the two having a very comparable population. And despite that, the per capita availability of water within Iran has dramatically plummeted since the time of the 1979 Islamic Revolution as well. Based on a study conducted by Sadiq Dakan in 2009, the per capita water availability in Iran in 1979, immediately before the revolution, was estimated to be about 4,500 cubic meters per year per person. But now in the 2020s, the per capita water availability in the country is estimated to sit at just about 1,100 cubic meters per person per year, a quarter of what it used to be prior to the revolution.
A quarter? Like, how the fuck do you fuck a country so badly? Like, this must be a record. Like if you didn't know any better, like, it actually does seem like they're trying to destroy the country. Like, it's not like they're just maybe the way that the rate at which they're managing to destroy everything in Iran, a lot of Iranian people suspect that this is not because of mismanagement. These people don't actually suck at their job. Their goal is to destroy Iran, and they're actually very good at it because mismanagement couldn't destroy a country this fast. That's what a lot of Iranians say.
Per person per year, a quarter of what it used to be prior.
Oh, Ali, who's our admin and he's in Iran, is saying our house doesn't have water for 20 hours a day. Sometimes the whole day. Really, Ali? Your house doesn't have water 20 hours a day? That is insane.
Prior to the revolution. Compounding the regime's own policy mistakes towards water in the country is also the pace of climate change, which is impacting Iran harder than most other
bye, Shana.
Countries. Already dry and hot, Iran is only getting drier and hotter the more the time goes on. Over the past 3 decades, the average temperature experienced in Iran has risen by 1.8 degrees Celsius, roughly 4 times warmer than the global average over the same time period. The country has been locked in a near continuous.
Yeah, because when you lose water, for some reason you get hot faster. Like your temperature increases faster in you. I don't know I forgot the exact reason, but when you don't have enough humidity, your temperature actually raises faster. So it's basically like a cyclical. You're stuck in a loop.
Average over the same time period. The country has been locked in a near continuous drought for the past 5 years that's lasted since 2020, and which has seen a 30% reduction in the country's annual rainfall, all of which is reducing the ability for the country's depleted rivers, lakes, and aquifers to be able to naturally replenish themselves. And it's only going to continue getting even worse from a climate change perspective, too. Even if Iran addresses the necessary reforms that they need to make in order to curb their water overconsumption, there is little they can do in the face of a warming climate that is currently projected to increase their mean annual temperature by a further 2.6 degrees Celsius. And that'll also include a further 35% drop in their annual rainfall levels over the next few decades.
This is a nightmare, guys. This is a nightmare. I don't even know what we're going to do. Like, there is no fixing this. There is no fixing this. I don't know what to do. This is a nightmare.
Of course, ironic that Iran, one of the world's top petrostates, is one of the greatest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions and climate change, and one of the most vulnerable countries to its consequences. Renewable energy still makes up less than 1% of Iran's total energy mix. And all of the...
the Shah wanted to use solar panels to diversify Iran's energy industry, and many people back then laughed at him, like because back then solar energy wasn't seen as something to be taken seriously. But now a lot of people can see that the Shah was way ahead of his time.
He still makes up less than 1% of Iran's total energy mix, and all of the rest is still made up by oil and gas, which makes Iran one of the highest per capita emitters of CO2 emissions in the world. Then, to make the situation even worse, compounding on the regime's own mismanagement, the international sanctions, and climate change, is the fact that the Taliban next door in Afghanistan...
Oh, by the way, before we go to Afghanistan, another thing that he doesn't mention that makes everything worse is that because the Islamic Republic might sometimes have a hard time selling its oil because of the sanctions, they just burn it inside Iran to make bitcoins out of it, and they just leave the Iranian people with the pollution. They just burn it on double speed in the most polluted way possible. And they just keep all the oil that was supposed to be burning all around the world. It just keeps burning in Iran, and the IRGC gets the Bitcoin, and the Iranians get the pollution.
And to make the situation even worse, compounding on the regime's own mismanagement, the international sanctions, and climate change, is the fact that the Taliban next door in Afghanistan have been throttling Iran's water supply even harder. One of the greatest rivers that flows into Iran is the Hari River, which begins upstream in the mountains of Afghanistan before flowing downstream and making up the international border with Iran and Turkmenistan. The Hari River is the primary water source for the city of Mashhad in the far northeast of Iran, the country's second largest city that's home to more than 3.5 million people. But since the Taliban returned back to power again in Afghanistan in 2021, they've begun constructing a new, huge hydroelectric power station here that they're calling the Pashdan Dam, which Iranian authorities fear will cut off the Hari River's water supply from Mashhad once it's completed, exacerbating the nationwide water crisis even further, because it means that Iran's own already overstressed water supplies elsewhere will need to be diverted towards Mashhad in order to compensate. Iranian state media has already warned that the Taliban's filling of the Pashdan Dam, which began in 2024, has led to the water supply nearly drying up completely in the reservoir behind the Dusti Dam, further downstream that's shared between Iran and Turkmenistan.
Dusti means friendship. It's the dam of friendship.
2024 has led to the water supply nearly drying up completely in the reservoir behind the Dusti Dam, further downstream that's shared between Iran and Turkmenistan. Worsened even further by the fact that the Khorasan province where Mashhad is located in has become the driest of all of Iran's provinces in terms of rainfall deficit. Afghanistan has never signed a treaty with either Iran or Turkmenistan regulating water flows along the Hari River. And so, the Taliban argues that they can basically do whatever they want to do with the river's waters further upstream.
This could actually start a war at some point between the Islamic Republic and the Taliban, because Iran will not be able to at all tolerate losing all that water. Like, they cannot. Like, they would not be able to survive this.
Afghanistan and Iran have signed a legal agreement that's supposed to regulate the flow of water on another major river further south called the Helmand River, which similarly begins within the Afghan mountains and flows into the Sistan Basin just across the border within Iran.
See, this is, if they close this river completely, then the Sistan, Baluchistan parts of Iran is going to get even more poor than it is already. And then the Baluchi this is going to fuel Baluchi separatism around this area,
which historically sustained the Hamoon wetlands. After decades of failed negotiations, Iran and Afghanistan eventually signed the Helmand River Water Treaty in 1973, which guaranteed that Afghanistan would allow at least 820 million cubic meters of water annually downstream the river to Iran.
So, Asian Americans saying, would a war cause or delay regime change? I think, it both in some ways it will cause it because of more dissatisfaction, but in some ways it would delay it because the regime will make everything more become more militant, and it will have more. You will have more. We will use it as an excuse to basically crush down any form of dissent, because the country would be in war, and the government will have a way to, among its supporters, to get them motivated to support the regime. So it has, in some ways, it could cause the toppling of the regime, but in some ways it will also help the regime to increase the zeal, because so many of the supporters of the regime are very disappointed right now, and they're not supporting the regime that much. So a war might actually help them get back that passion and motivation to support the regime. But also war brings poverty and dissatisfaction, and that could actually do the opposite as well. So it's multifactorial, and we don't know which one is going to be stronger.
Shortly afterwards, though, Afghanistan experienced a communist revolution in 1978.
So see, both Iran and Afghanistan became Islamized because of a communist revolution. Basically, the communists started it to destroy the order, and then from the vacuum, the Islamists basically took power. This is why we Iranians and Afghanistanis should warn the West regarding how the left and the Islamists work with each other, and eventually the Islamists will take over. What happened to Afghanistan is exactly what happened to Iran.
Afterwards, though, Afghanistan experienced a communist revolution in 1978 that threw the
Like you guys knew in the chat that Afghanistan had a communist revolution. Afghanistan was progressing really fast. They had a really good monarchy, and then they had the communist revolution, and then it became Islamized. Did you guys knew that Afghanistan had the communist revolution before it became Islamized?
Afterwards, though, Afghanistan experienced a communist revolution in 1978 that threw the country into a half-century of continuous chaos, while Iran experienced the Islamic Revolution the very year after.
No, the Islamic Revolution of 1979 was technically a communist revolution that was allied with the Islamists, and then the Islamists backstabbed the leftists as they always do, and then took power. So both Afghanistan and Iran had a communist revolution that turned Islamic.
Of continuous chaos, while Iran experienced the Islamic Revolution the very year after that prevented either side from ever really focusing its attention on the issue for decades. Ever since, both sides have periodically accused the other of violating the agreement. But after the Taliban returned back to a stable position of power again in 2021, they almost immediately started damming and diverting the river for their own purposes despite the treaty, like with the Kamal Khan Dam that the Taliban recently inaugurated in February of 2025. Afghanistan, too, is a country that has been hard hit by drought and climate change in recent years, which has led the Taliban regime to argue that they have no other choice but to reduce the deliveries of water downstream to Iran in order to satisfy their own needs first. With the completion of the Kamal Khan Dam along the Helmand River early in 2025, Iranian authorities have claimed that they've only received around 100 million cubic meters of water through the river across the year. A tiny fraction of the 820 million cubic meters per year that the 1973 Water Treaty ostensibly guarantees them. Ecologically, the results have immediately become apparent. The Hamoon wetlands within Iran that are fed by the Helmand River have almost completely dried up to nothing already, fueling dust storms, wrecking regional agriculture.
We Iranians get so many videos of dust storms from this area. The people, like I saw a woman saying they're like they lost everything, they lost all their livelihood, and now they had dust everywhere, dust in their eyes. There was dust always in the ear, in their eyes, and everywhere, and they couldn't even clean themselves. And I remember there was she was talking to the camera, and she was like, "Just come kill us already! Like we cannot live like this anymore." Like she was asking for a favor. She was like, "Can you please? If given that nobody's coming here to help us, can anybody send people to come kill us?" That's what she was asking for.
The Hamoon wetlands within Iran that are fed by the Helmand River have almost completely dried up to nothing already, fueling dust storms, wrecking regional agriculture, and driving even more internal migration. All of this activity by the Taliban on the Hari and Helmand rivers is worsening Iran's water crisis even further, and it's fueling the rising tensions that are emerging between the two countries. In 2023, Iranian and Taliban soldiers briefly clashed with each other near the Helmand River. And as of 2025, Iran has attempted to exert pressure on the Taliban by rolling out an enormous deportation campaign of Afghan migrants and refugees who are residing in the country. Iran claims that the deportation campaign is due to their unsubstantiated claims that the Afghan community in the country acted as spies for Israel during their brief 12-day war over the summer. But the real reason they're doing it is out of enormous desperation to try and pressure the Taliban into releasing water downstream the Helmand and Hari rivers.
Interesting. So the spying accusations is a lie. They're just trying to find a way to, because they have no leverage. The Islamic Republic has no leverage over the Taliban other than mass migration back to their country. Interesting. Well, that's not going to be good enough.
Give them some kind of relief. And as a side effect, to reduce the numbers of people that they need to actually supply with water. Within just a single month, Iranian authorities had already forcefully deported around 1.1 million Afghans from the country across the border into Afghanistan, in what the UN has described as—
This is the problem that the regime started themselves, because these are the same people that the regime allowed in on purpose, mass migration of people inside Iran. because they were realizing that the Iranian population was becoming less Islamic. So to make the population more Islamic, they were just basically trying to bring people from Lebanon, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, right? And now they're sending them back as a way to Afghanistan, at least as a way to weaponize them against Afghanistan.
Afghans from the country across the border into Afghanistan, in what the UN has described as potentially being the largest forced movement of population during this entire decade. The entire Afghan population in Iran before this deportation campaign began was around 4 million strong, and Iran has declared their intention to fully expel all of them, meaning that there are millions more that Iran is currently in the process of deporting to Afghanistan right now, escalating the tensions between themselves and the Taliban even further. The consequences of everything here have combined to make Iran on the brink of catastrophic water bankruptcy, and that is exacerbating one of Iran's other greatest vulnerabilities, its ethnic fault lines. Iran is a highly diverse ethnic state that resembles—
Oh, look at the ethnicities, guys. So the green is Persian. So this is why you don't call Iran Persia. Because if you want to call Iran Persia, then you're going to help it. You're going to help cessationists, because then they're going to argue like, okay, if you want to be Persia, then only that green area should be yours, right? Iran has, so let's see, the green is Persian. The dark purple is Azeri, which is basically close to Turkish. We have the yellow is Kurdish and the northwest and also the northeast. And then the Baluchis are in the orange one in the southeast. And then we have the Lur, which is the lighter shade of purple. You see the Arab areas, guys? The Arab is the Khuzestan, but also close the Bandar in. So basically on the west, this is Arab, and also close to Bandar Abbas and the south. And here we have Arabs, and there's some other ethnicities that it doesn't mention here, like Bakhtiari, Gilaki. So I don't see them here because I think they're smaller.
The pattern of most historical empires. It consists of a core of Persians in the center of the country across the central plateau, and a ring of various ethnic minorities around it across the frontiers and peripheries, including large numbers of Azeris, Kurds, Lurs, and Arabs in the west, and Baloch in the southeast.
Yeah, so when they say Iranians are not Arabs, we have a little bit of Arabs. Just a little bit. A tiny bit, like here and here, Iranian Arabs. All right. So Gajan is saying, thank you for the super chat, Gajan. Gajan saying, how do you say Persia in Farsi? Well, Farsi, it means Persian. So Persian is Parsi. Persian is Parsi. And the Arabized version of the word Parsi is Farsi, right? So Persian in Persian is Parsi, but because the Arabs don't have the word pe, they turn Parsi into Farsi, right? So it's interesting because you say, how do you say Persian in Farsi? You actually said it yourself, Farsi. Farsi is Farsi. Farsi is Farsi for Persian, but the original is Parsi. Yeah.
Crippling reduction in water coming through the Helmand River into the southeast of Iran is fueling the cause of Baloch separatism, where a violent insurgency is growing increasingly difficult for the government to contain and control. In Khuzestan, a province in the west of Iran that is home to a considerable Arab minority, Arab communities have accused the government of—
By the way, the Greeks believed, they made this up, that the Persians are the son of the Perseus, the demigod Perseus.
Difficult for the government to contain and control. In Khuzestan, a province in the west of Iran that is home to a considerable Arab minority, Arab communities have accused the government of favoring the Lurs by diverting the Karun River that runs through their territory, while they also blame the government for having contaminated the Karun River with salt through the misguided construction of the Gotfand Dam further upstream. In neighboring Loristan, where the Lur minority lives, the Lur community has often accused the government of stealing their water from the nearby Persian majority city of Isfahan through diversion.
So see, like this is how the regime also is trying to, on purpose, by the way, cause ethnic tensions. So the water, you can see the water that was coming from the Persian area to the Arab area. Now the regime has built a dam right at the borders of the Arab area, so that the water of the Arab area is going to the Persian area. So this you know why the regime actually likes causing ethnic tensions? Because if you have more ethnic tensions between Persians and Arabs, then you help try to grow cessationist attitudes, and the government hopes that with more cessationists, Iranians will support the regime, because Iranians are very sensitive about their border integrity. So if you have cessationist movements, the regime is trying to use that as a way to get the Iranian people back into its arms.
Accused the government of stealing their water from the nearby Persian majority city of Isfahan through diversion projects like the Behestabad and the Kuhrain canals. While in the northwest, the vanishing of Lake Urmia has sparked tension.
Yeah, so Amir is saying it's a rally around the flag effect. That's what they're hoping for, because Iranians are very, very, very sensitive about, like, justifiably so sensitive about their border integrity, as they should be, right? So the regime always tries to threaten Iranian people that without me, the border integrity of the Iran will not be preserved, as the only way to try to get some support back from the Iranian people, because it knows that it's hated by the Iranian people. So instead of like trying to justify its rule, it just tries to say the alternative is that we will lose parts of Iran. That's their marketing tactic now.
Kuhrain canals. While in the northwest, the vanishing of Lake Urmia has sparked tensions between the country's Kurdish and Azeri minorities, who've historically shared the lake and its resources that are now lost.
Yeah, so you see that this purple part is Azeri, which is basically very close to Turkish, and the yellow area is Kurdish. So, and now they're fighting over ethnic lines over the remaining water here as well. So you see, like, geographical tensions turns into ethnic tensions, and the government loves that. The government likes to but again, the nationalists and the patriotic revolution that is happening in Iran, the attempt is to make everybody united and forget about ethnicity and just focus on the Iranian identity rather than the Persian identity or the Arab identity or the Azeri identity or the Kurdish identity. Because for our revolution, we need to become patriotic and just forget about all our ethnic identities and focus on our Iranian identity.
If the country's water crisis continues to get worse than it's already become, it could easily begin to exacerbate these ethnic tensions within the country to a boiling point. And so far, the Iranian regime has proven completely incapable of coming up with any actual solutions to the crisis. They
actually want the crisis, like at least the ethnic crisis, right? I mean, here's the thing. A lot of people are like, oh, the regime doesn't have any solutions for this crisis. The regime doesn't care about Iran. The regime, like, okay, what is the Islamic Republic right now? The Islamic Republic is IRGC. Go read their goals and their statements and even their name. There's no mention of Iran. The entire purpose of the IRGC is the expansion of Islamic ideology in the region and then eventually the entire world, especially by removing Israel out of the way so that they could at least capture the Middle East and also Saudi Arabia, right? So to them, this is not about Iran. To them, this is about Islam, and Iran is just a resource that they need to use to the fullest and spend it all. And basically, they don't care about the people. They don't care about Iran. They just want to completely use the resources of Iran so that they could basically continue with their Islamic expansionist policies. So when you say they have failed to come up with any solutions, that comes with an assumption that they're trying to improve the well-being of the Iranian people, and they have somehow failed. They haven't failed. They have actually succeeded in robbing the resources of the Iranian people for their Islamic agenda. They have actually been very successful. This is not necessarily because of mismanagement. This is actually proper management, but in a different direction.
Ministry of Energy has proposed a grandiose plan of building out desalination plants along the Persian Gulf and the Caspian Sea, connected to a vast web of pipelines that'll transfer desalinated water into the most stressed areas of the interior, like Isfahan, Kerman, and Yazd. But constructing this project will cost untold billions of dollars and take many years to build out. And the regime has neither the purse nor the time to adequately do this.
Nor the interest.
And the regime has neither the purse nor the time to adequately do this. The rampant corruption within the halls of government mean that any investment for these projects will almost certainly be siphoned off before they're ever able to begin. The real solutions that Iran desperately
siphon off to supporting Hamas and Hezbollah. You know, we're like, oh, let's say, like, as soon as there's some money gathered somewhere, they're going to be used. They're going to be siphoned off for the IRGC's ambition to destroy Israel. That's where it's going to go.
Be siphoned off before they're ever able to begin. The real solutions that Iran desperately needs to implement are internal reforms that'll actually curb the rampant overexploitation of the country's water resources.
Wrong. There is no reform. There is no solving any of this with this reform. Do you understand that this is within the DNA of the regime now, especially given that the IRGC's entire structure and framework is built for the purpose of creating a Shia empire and then eventually destroying Israel and taking over the world? Like, there is no reform that could fix this. The only thing you could do to maybe actually slow down the harm to Iran is regime change. There is no reform. There is no reform. There is no way to fix this with reform. If you understand the Islamic Republic, you wouldn't be talking about reform. You would only be talking about regime change.
Like actually enforcing limits on the number of the country's wells, reducing subsidies for farmers that are prioritizing water-intensive crops like rice, and abandoning the
water-intensive. This is what I was telling you earlier. Water-intensive crops like rice and wheat and watermelon, which the mullahs decided to focus on because they thought, well, that's what we eat and we don't want to buy it from anywhere else. That's why we have a water crisis, because these are water-intensive. The Shah had it right. The Shah was focusing on farming things that require less water, and they sell for so much in the international market, and we could buy all the rice that we need with that money.
The idea of full agricultural self-sufficiency, re-diverting the billions of dollars they spend a year on proxy forces and regional warfare against the Israelis and the Americans, and, above all else, reallocating water use from heavy industry to public and municipal uses instead. All of which are a mass.
Yeah, basically telling the IRGC to give up on all the money that it's making. Sure, try reforming that. You do understand that they have all the guns, right? And they control the economy, and they basically people. Do you understand that? Do you guys understand that environmental activists were killed in Iran because they talked about this? To the point that the environmental activists that just stopped talking about these issues at some point in Iran. Like, I'm not talking about political activists. I'm not talking about people who basically came and criticized Khamenei or the regime. I'm talking about people who were just talking about the environment, and they were not politically involved. And the regime started killing environmental activists who were bringing attention to this issue. People who were just talking about water, not about regime change, not about Israel, not about Pahlavi, not about Khamenei, not about anything, just about like, oh my God, like we need to fix the situation. The regime started killing people for talking about water and other environmental issues. So many of our environmental activists that were not politically involved at all got killed for this. So yeah, the IRGC is making shit ton of money from this, and they have all the power, they have all the guns, they have all their government units. They control all the government units. So go tell them like, hey, can you please stop doing this and redirect some of the water to the Iranian people and make less money, and then just see what happens to you. Like, do you want, like, when people talk about reform, what they imagine is that you could go tell IRGC, like, can you please make less money for the sake of the Iranian people? And the IRGC will like, oh, okay, sure. Why didn't you ask earlier? That's what people talk about when they say we need reform in Iran, which is delusional.
Uphill battle to overcome against the deeply entrenched interests of the IRGC and regime insiders who profit tremendously off of the current system at the expense of literally everyone else. And despite all of Iran's catastrophic ongoing problems with its water supply, the country's regime is still choosing to pour enormous resources into rebuilding their nuclear weapons program instead. Just a few days before I released this video, Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, said that the country would be rebuilding their nuclear research sites that were destroyed by American and Israeli bombing attacks stronger than ever before. While few comments have been made at all by the government on solving the continuing water crisis. Government dysfunction is not a unique phenomenon to Iran, however, and closer to home in the United States, the government shutdown has recently just become the longest ever in American history.
Oh, this is now just an ad about their other program. Oh, given that they're doing an ad about where to go next, we will do an ad about where to go next. Guys, we have another group gathering in about 30 minutes. So let me actually put the link. Let's go on our group call after this and talk to each other there. Come over there. So I put the link there if you guys want to come up and talk to me and talk to the other people in our community. So I'm going to change the name. Right now, the name of our community is World Liberty Battle Camp. I'm thinking of, because it doesn't really communicate what the group is about, I'm thinking of changing the name to World Liberty Discussion Group. Right? So, and it's basically somewhere where we go and have group calls and talk about politics with each other. So just when you join the group, so I put the link one more time. The link is also in the description. So when you click on the link and join the community, just go after you join, and it's free, guys. It's free. After you join the community, just click on the calendar, and then you can see here's our next group call. So you just click on the group call, and then you click on the link, and then you come inside and you talk to us, or you just listen. You don't have to talk. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. You don't have to talk if you don't want to, but you can talk also if you want to. And yeah, so don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, leave a comment, support the channel, and all of that stuff. Thank you, guys, everybody. Let me see. Did I miss any super chats? No, I didn't. I answered them all. Thank you guys for supporting the channel, and I'll see you tomorrow, same time. I'm Israel Chai, Javid Shah. See you guys. Come to our group. Let's have a group call there.